Your mother was an Argonian. Hello and welcome, apprentices. I am the Wizard of Winterhold, a laughing tombstone. I left for a while and came back with a small series for everyone. If my thumbnail and title are too subtle, let me explain the problem I've solved, then we can dive into the solution. This problem is an old curse to some. At higher difficulties, Skyrim's player is more frail than an old wicker fence in a hurricane. Most opponents are too dangerous to just charge in and do combat with. That's why most of us avoid the battle charge. If you want to play a warrior, the general consensus is that you need to be doing so on expert difficulty. As a general rule of this channel, everything is done on legendary. I'm also playing on the 2011 edition and have no mods installed. I don't have the unofficial patch installed. I don't so much as have SkyUI or SKSE to make it run. I have the 3 DLC we all have access to: Hearthfires, Dawnguard, and Dragonborn. If you have that, you can keep up with everything I'm doing. Now let's move on to my build, because your character can be important. Britons, Nords, and Dunmer all start with some form of natural defense. The point I want to make is that you don't really need it, so we have an old friend coming along. Sir Smash saw the speech video and asked how I did that thing at the end with Alduin. You know, the thing where I had a little snowberry absorbing all the dragon flame that Alduin could spit at her? Here's a card if you want to see the rest of that video. If I leave a card, I'll also put a link in the description below for everyone. When I told Sir Smash I was actually holding back with her defenses, he asked to be in the next video. I warned him that if we're doing this, he will need to pick up a little bit of magic. He didn't seem too enthusiastic, but is willing to learn if it helps make him invincible. I call this build the Alteration Knight, so magic is absolutely required. I won't be calling on the full repertoire of what alteration magic can do. All I really need are the flesh spells, Candlelight, and the occasional detect spell, as well as a few of the perks. This is a really good way to find out if everyone survived the dragon attack. I try to avoid which race your character is for these guides. You should be able to play however you want, and as long as you follow some loose rules, be fine. Which means that a huge orc is perfect. I have no passive defense. I do gain access to Berserker Rage, an anime-style skill that lets me just decide to take half damage and deal double melee damage for a full minute. At low levels, this will let me fight a bit over where I should be able to. This power is actually so good that I'm going to forego the use of followers. I will still get quest followers, and when I do, my highest priority is to send them back home. I'm doing the quest as soon as I can, just so I can get rid of them. Now, I haven't really discovered anything new here. I want to make that expressly clear. All of this is already on the wiki and is known to the community. My purpose here is just to show you a new way of looking at old information. I'll be leaving a link to the front page of the wiki I'm using in the description below. That is my source for the technical details I'm giving you. The practical details are coming from me. The thing that relegates us to the shadows is our lack of magic and elemental resistances. The power of shouts, the element on your blade, the spell in your hand, it's all magic. And it's still magic when your enemy uses it against you. Find any video of someone getting one shot on legendary, you'll probably see an enchantment trigger too. My guess is that you saw one of 4 things. Either an absorb health effect triggered, or you saw an element go off. Sparks from your body, you burst into flames, or turn to frosty blue? Even at the melee damage resistance cap, you are still vulnerable to magic. So when you don't do anything to stop the incoming 60 to 90 points of magic damage that bandit has on their weapon, you just go down. Let's talk about what 25 points of magic damage from any source does to the player on legendary, and how I got that damage range. If you have no defenses against the incoming 25 points of damage, then we're talking about 75 points of damage, because playing on legendary triples how much damage the player takes. Using that same weapon, we would do 6 or 7 points of damage each blow against an enemy with no defense. Because playing on legendary means you do a quarter of the stated damage. This detail can be easy to miss. Let me show you. Here's the Bloodskull blade Sir Smash has. 105 points of damage on legendary. And if I turn the difficulty to novice and leave my menu, this blade is said to do 105 points of damage. The truth is that I would do 210 points to anything I hit with this thing. On Adept, that number is literal. The damage done is 105 points of damage because Adept does exact damage. On Legendary, this is really doing about 26 points of damage. Now let's talk about magic. I want to use a powerful weapon as a yardstick, so let's boot up Homeless Joe and see what some of the best weapons in Skyrim look like in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to use them. I'm just gonna cheat my way into the QA smoke cell to look for a few weapons and fail to save the game. I'll need to do a bit more cheating later on in the series, and I'll do two things every time I do. The first is tell you that I'm cheating and how I did it. In this case, I'm using the console to go to a dev cell with a copy of everything in the game. We're here to look at high tier weapons as a weak character. The second thing I'm going to do after cheating is delete my cheated saves. I'm only going to cheat long enough to get the footage I need for the video and then remove the fruits of the cheating. So here are the Daedric Warhammers when Homeless Joe is looking at them. An NPC with Joe stats holding these weapons would do 177 points of damage on Legendary. 87 for the melee damage and 90 from the enchantment. Your starting health bar was 100 points of health and you could only get 10 per level if you so choose. 90 points is a lot of damage. Now that I'm done cheating, for now, we can get the Lordstone. Getting this was probably obvious, so it's where we're starting. 25% magic resistance is the best we can get for free. This also gives an extra 50 to your armor rating. That's enough to matter early game or if you're trying to use mage armor and a shield. Just having a 25% defense against magic can take that undefended 90 points of damage down to 26 or 27 points of damage taken. We can do better for our passive magic defense. There's a quest that'll bring this up a little bit more. Any character can walk into the Temple of Mara in Riften and talk to Dinya Balu. She's a Dunmer priestess helping out in the temple. If we ask her about Mara, she'll wax poetic for a bit before asking if we want to help some lovers. This quest is entirely non-violent, and it'll bring our magic defenses from 25% to 40. Or the 90 points of damage we keep talking about down to 54, so accept the quest and go to Iverstead. Here we need to find Fastred. She wants to elope, but she can't because she has parents. Her father won't let her go, but her mother would be fine with it. You need to speak to both of them. Go to the inn and then speak with Bassianus once you're done. He'll go speak with Fastred, and then you'll be told that you can return to the Temple of Mara. Once we're there, we're told we have more quest that needs doing. The second couple is in Markarth. Calselmo has apparently been praying to Mara. For some reason, we were the one who was sent to help. He knows that he needs to ask Ingvir the Singer for help, but he can't do it himself for whatever reason. Ingvir is the guy who can usually be found leaning against this rock. If you ask, he'll be willing to sell you a love poem he wrote a while ago. Once you've acquired the poem, you need to be the one to hand it to the House Carl Falin. She'll give you a letter for Calselmo in return, and when you give it to him, another cutscene will play out. Once this is done, we can return to Dinya for a reward, an Amulet of Mara, and another part of the quest. You need the amulet to finish this quest. We need to put it on and go to Euchre's monument. Here, you'll find the ghost of Ruki. You will only be able to see her if you are wearing an Amulet of Mara like the one Dinya gave you. Speak with Ruki and you'll find that she's been here for a while, turning over the bodies of the last great battle fought here. She's been here looking for the body of Fenring for a long time now. He just isn't here. From her point of view, it's just too late. From our point of view, both Ruki and her lover are ghosts. We can find Fenring on the other side of the mountain by the river, just past Swingler's Den and a dragon mound. He's waiting for the battle to come tomorrow. Tell him his wife is here looking for him, and he'll disappear after claiming that he'll follow you. Return to Ruki, and Fenring will reappear for a cutscene. This also marks the last couple we need to help. Returning to Dinya gets our prize, 15% magic resistance. And from here, things get a bit more complex. We have options to explore. Enchantments can get us to the magic resistance cap. Potions like the Knight's Nuanced Snowberry was using are also very helpful, especially in the early game. Or we could pick up a few spells. I can get that 40% magic resistance till we sit at 70% if we're willing to use a little bit of alteration magic. Magic resistance is a set of 3 perks, each worth 10% more magic resistance than the last. If you're casting a flesh spell as soon as you enter combat, you should be able to get there easily enough. And with all 3 perks, we can look at that 90 points of elemental damage again. We've brought that down quite significantly. We should only be taking 27 points of magic damage each successful hit. The cap for defenses can change depending on what defense we're talking about. Magic resistance doesn't stop until 85%, so we can keep going. Just not with permanent benefits. 70% is the best natural resting point I can give you unless you're a Breton. Bretons have a natural 25% magic resistance, so it's possible to sit at the cap like this. This is supposed to be a guide for any race and any character, so I'm filling in the missing 15% with an enchantment. I'm not even going to be the one who makes it. Savor's Hide is good enough for what we need. Putting this on gets me to 85%, provided I never take it off. With that, let's look at the Warhammer with Joe again, the one I'm cheating to look at. We haven't done anything about the 87 points of melee damage, so I'll be using the full value in my math. The magic damage would normally be 90 points of whatever element is on the hammer. That's 177 points of raw damage on legendary. We're doing something about the magic, so let's take that into account. We are only affecting the enchantment, so that's an 85% reduction in the magic damage. 90 minus 85% is 13.5. I'm going to round up and say that's 14 points of damage, meaning we just brought that Warhammer down to doing 101 points of damage. We can keep going on the magic defenses. Let's get into the elements, what they do to you, and how to defend against them. Just like magic resistance, your elemental resistance stops at 85%. And, as the wiki says, and I'm proving here, this stacks with your magic resistance. This is a 97.75% reduction in elemental damage. That 90 points of damage we're talking about on the hammer, we are, in all honesty, talking about bringing that down to maybe 3 points of elemental damage. If a spell were to hit for 500 points of damage, you would only take 12. That's the power we're talking about here and how I keep doing this. Elemental resistance is not a good substitute for magic resistance. Non-elemental magic is a real thing in Skyrim. It's what vampires are doing with Drain Health. Spriggans are casting non-elemental magic when they use their B spell. I'm also not sure what these Seekers are shooting at me, but it doesn't seem to have an element. The point is that elemental defenses will only work against their element. Dragons that use non-elemental shouts do exist. They'll trade between elemental and non-elemental shouts too. Elemental resistance is like your follower. It may be good at what it does, but their friend is a lot more interesting. Each of the 3 elements is tailored to affect one of your main stats over the other 2. Fire is the main magical beat stick exclusively targeting health. That's why it does extra damage as you burn. If you're in first person, being lit on fire can also blind you. I play in third person, so it wasn't a problem for me. I've been using potions to defend myself against the elements. The one I've been using for fire is the Vampire's Valor. I've already shown this one off with the greenhouse setup. For the purposes of this video, we care about the resist fire part of the potion. Unlike enchantments, one potion can sometimes be enough to make all the difference. The elemental resistance on your potions can do a lot more than just reach the defensive cap. They can exceed it, so all you need are the right potions to get all the defense you need. Enchantments are perfectly viable if you're okay with switching around your jewelry. That's what I was doing with Snowberry. If your opponent isn't using fire, then they're probably using frost. This is the other element that seems to be everywhere, from enchanted equipment to dragons shouting at you to mages casting frost spells. Vampires seem to mostly avoid using fire, so they're likely to use either this or shock magic. I've never seen a Draugr use anything else. Even at the later game, when you're fighting optional super bosses like Karstag, you'll still encounter frost damage, so it's best to be prepared. Frost magic does damage to your health, stamina, and slows you down. The element is designed to counter warriors. Slowing means that you can't reach your opponents to defeat them. The stamina damage is to deny you power attacks, bashing, power bashing, and sprinting. If you're wearing heavy armor, the slowing effect really can be crippling. I've been answering frost magic with what I call Draugr's Downfall potions. At low levels, this potion doesn't serve all that much of a function. At middling levels, this is going to be a sizable chunk of my heavy armor and all of my frost resistance. These are decent enough, and will be a faithful companion for a long time. They aren't the best because of how few grow and how many garden plots you need. I'm using 9 plots of thistle, 7 patches of snowberries, and 14 patches of whitecaps. That's 30 plots of soil, and each greenhouse brings a building up to 29 plots. I used the spare spot at the house growing the Vampire's Valor potions for the last of the whitecaps. This is worth 27 potions every time we go home to pick flowers and mushrooms. 28 if you pick any wildly growing thistle before making potions. These are cheap and rare, but still worth having for the defense it gives, at least for now. This is a potion made to be used for a while and replaced with something else later. I'll show you that in a minute. For now, let's talk about shock magic. I'm using Magicka Guard potions to counter shock. These are potions of fortified destruction with a resist shock effect attached to them. Shock magic is designed to drain your magicka unrelentingly. Here's what it looks like when you stack elemental and magic resistance against the most powerful shock spells a Croesus can hit me with. He can stop my magicka from regenerating and can even do some damage to my magic pool. Not enough to stop me from setting up again, mind you, but enough to stop me from doing that a third time. This was the biggest threat shock magic was able to pose. Remember that Croesus is the best shock mage in the game. That mask makes sure that this particular Dragon Priest hits the hardest with shock magic. To make a Magicka Guard potion, we plan a dozen Nightshade, 8 glowing mushrooms, and 9 snowberries. That should be enough to fill up a house with an attached greenhouse. This is worth 3 dozen Magic Guard potions. With this, I am now immune from magic essentially. Now, you don't have to use this exact potion setup. You can do this with enchantments or combine potions with enchantments for a while. It doesn't matter as long as the relevant resistance grows. I even ended up changing what I was growing after a while. I went to the house I was growing Draugr's Downfall in and changed that to growing Hailstorm Provisions. That's 12 thistle branches, 9 snowberry, and 8 patches of glowing mushrooms for 3 dozen potions every time we're here. This won't do anything for destruction magic or heavy armor, however, this one potion will fill in for both our shock and frost resistances. Hailstorm Provisions renders Magicka Guard less useful. Here's a card to the video I made explaining the potion I'll be switching over to. It's an old standby of mine I call the Mage Rage potion. The conversion from one to the other is easy. Just dig up the snowberries and grow wheat instead. With that, you have everything you need to stop dying constantly. This isn't everything you need to know. This series has 2 more parts for a reason. The next part covers physical armor, what your armor rating does and does not do, and reasons to commit to either heavy or light armor. How I'm getting a set of mixed armor to work, why frostbite spiders keep taking you down, and what magic absorption does will be in the 3rd video. If you would like to help support the channel, or just check out my alchemy guide, then you can find a link to my Substack in the About section of the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.